They're calling it the 67 billion EV regret club. That's right, 67 billion and counting down the drain for electric cars. Sam Murchowski here behind the What's Right microphone. Greetings, friends. Welcome to the program. Good to be with you. Sam at what'srightshow.com is my email. So Honda apparently just wrote off 15.7 billion, joining Stellantis at 26 billion. Remember the electric Jeeps? Yeah, that wasn't going to go over big. Ford at 19.5 billion, GM 6 billion. And just in those companies, that's a lot of money. Reality is undefeated. I think that's the story. Also seeing that Porsche, their profits down 97%, and they doubled down on they went all in on electric cars, and slowly those cars disappearing. Nobody wants this crap. Let the free market decide. Look, if gas prices go through the roof and people can't afford to drive their gas-powered cars, they'll demand electric cars. You got to get these things working better. They have to have better range. They have to be functionally, offer greater savings. Anyway, this whole thing is what happens when you have an economy decided not by the marketplace, but rather by governments. Never, ever a good idea. Speaking of bad ideas, and I saw this earlier in the week, and of course, everything else going on, I didn't get to it, but the government in Great Britain, this terrible Keir Starmer communist-led British government, is doing away with Winston Churchill on their money, on their currency. Churchill is going the way of the dodo. He's being retired. Funny enough, they're putting animals on the currency instead. So, yet UK wildlife is going to be the new theme of banknotes issued by the Bank of England. So instead of Churchill, we're going to get a hedgehog, apparently. All historical figures are being removed. Austin, Turing, Turner, now Churchill. This is it. They did a public consultation, said that 60% of people chose nature. Look, this is the surrender, right? Churchill, once upon a time, said famously, no surrender when facing an existential threat from external enemies. Now the invaders are inside the country. Britain has been overtaken. This much is true. And the culture, culture takes time to build. It takes centuries, in fact, for great countries to build a defining and lasting culture. It could be destroyed, though, very quickly. So this is our inheritance. Culture is something we get. It's passed on from our parents, our grandparents, our great-grandparents. The problem is it's a custodial relationship. It's ours to preserve, not to piss away. So good job. Way to go, United Kingdom, once again off to the races with woke. Polymarket odds, Marco Rubio's 2028 presidential bid looking strong. Look, he said he's not running. Let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Remember I mentioned the donors? Earlier in the week, I mentioned that there was a meeting of top-tier donors, big donors. Trump had a dinner. He said, hey, who ought to be the torchbearer? Who ought to continue the movement when I leave office? And it was sort of a straw poll and just a majority. I think everybody except one basically said Rubio over Vance. That's what the big donors want. I believe, I'm going to tell you this, folks, I believe number one, most important thing is we need to have an open and robust primary. And whoever runs. If Rubio wants to stay out of it and give JD his turn, that's fine. But it's too early. I certainly don't want the donors picking who the nominee is. Remember, if we listened to the donors 4 years ago, we would have gotten we would have gotten DeSantis, and DeSantis very well may have lost to Kamala Harris. Trust me on that, by the way. Okay, what's cooking here with the SAVE Act? I think we're still in the gridlock place. I think the big development with the SAVE Act, as of yesterday, is that they're debating it. They're having a debate, and there's going to be a vote probably next week. And this is forcing, of course, the Democrats to go on the record and give their reasons for why the SAVE Act is so terrible. Of course, some of the Republicans are helping them with this. Wink, wink, Lisa Murkowski from Alaska. Okay, I thought we would talk about what the big arguments are against. And these are the arguments against. They are making arguments against voter ID. I want to make that very clear. So number one, the argument is that it disenfranchises rural voters. Rural voters are less likely to go out and get a passport. Harder for them to do. By the way, this is very interesting. This argument was made by Murkowski. We played the clip yesterday. It's been made by April McClain, Delaney from Maryland, I think Balint from Vermont. A bunch of people have claimed this. Politicians have claimed this. You know what I find? What I find difficult, kind of logically about this, is that rural voters went for Trump 65 to 35. So if this is actually going to disenfranchise rural voters, this is a boon to Democrats, right? I mean, who are they to line up and be all supporting these rural voters that are a huge break for Trump, for Republicans, generally speaking? So, look, I mean, again, it's I think the argument here, when you hear Democrats starting to argue that rural voters are going to be harmed, it's all smoke and mirrors. The second argument is the one that I personally find so offensive, because I am married to a woman who once upon a time, when after some debate with me about the subject, changed her name. And I'm talking about married women here. Okay, so I don't know, guys, if you've been through this. Some women are very excited to take the name. My wife's maiden name was very simple. It was 4 letters. I can understand in retrospect that Sherry was not pleased about taking on the name Murkowski. It is a mouthful. Okay. But she did it. And as I recall, we traveled somewhere shortly after internationally. Given my family's ties to Europe, I think we went to the Czech Republic, but we traveled internationally. Argentina. Yeah, we went to Argentina right after. Anyway, the point is, she figured it out. Her name changed. She got a new passport. I think she could travel with the old one and have the marriage certificate with her. And it worked. It wasn't a problem. And all of these people out there that constantly make this argument, right? Elizabeth Warren ought to be ashamed. Mazie Hirono, Democrat, Hawaii. Boy, there is a low IQ individual. Chuck Schumer and others all claim married women can't figure out how to handle their ID. Well, okay. Married women went for Trump 52 to 47. You know this? Across all party lines, right? All married women, 52 to 47. Okay, that's the figure. Remember, it's single women that are sort of, unilaterally drawing this country into the toilet. That's the one kind of vertical of people that are outrageously left wing. Fun fact. Anyway, so again, I mean, it's a statement against interest. It's just a straw man argument. Number 3, I'm just going through the arguments that the left and some Republicans are making, who are against the SAVE Act, who do not want to pass voter ID, who do not want to clean up our elections. Argument is, and again, Chuck Schumer saying this is the Jim Crow 2.0 argument. Minorities can't figure it out. It's so offensive. No, I know it's offensive. Of course, it's terrible. It's gross, but that's the argument. Minorities are going to be disenfranchised. Why? Well, they never explain the why part, but if you sort of put your mind to it, you realize that what they're saying is the minorities are going to have a hard time getting their IDs in order. And I mean, it's absurd. Yeah, of course it's absurd. Right? Yeah. But why don't the Democrats, right? Exactly, Robbie. Why don't the Democrats just come right out and say that they think minorities are less capable than others? Isn't that essentially the argument? Just come out and say it. Well, they're not going to do that. Yeah, I understand they're not going to, but it's just it's the logical derivative of the arguments they're making. So, can you imagine? Again, don't they have NGOs? Don't they have George Soros funny money, basically, like kind of fluttering down from the heavens? Doesn't Act Blue have lots of fraudulent campaign contributions they can funnel into outreach and voter assistance for all of these? These are not my words, okay? These are Chuck Schumer's words, and I'm just translating a little bit. All of these idiotic Democrat voting minorities that can't figure out how to vote, which is nonsense, of course. Watch somebody cut that out of context, Robbie, and burn me with it, which is nonsense, which I and producer Robbie and we here on the What's Right show stand against, but that's the argument that they're making. But why don't they then, they can fix this problem. They know how to do this, motor voter. I mean, Democrats very good at this. So again, not a big concern. This is a tweet, by the way. Just the other day, Chuck Schumer did the Jim Crow thing. Quote, let me read this. Is that important? Quote, the SAVE Act is Jim Crow 2.0. It would disenfranchise tens of millions of people. If Trump is saying he won't sign any bills until the SAVE Act is passed, then so be it. There will be total gridlock in the Senate. How? Chuck Schumer. Friends, it's so offensive. All this, the idea, the saying that minority voters can't figure out how to get a ID to prove citizenship is so offensive. A great response, by the way, came via a person on X, a man named Zeke Arkham. That's fantastic. All right, so I'm going to read the whole thing because it's that good. It got a lot of love. Dear Chuck Schumer, quote, hi, black dude here. So he's apparently African American. Hi, black dude here. I can trace my family ancestry to slavery. I even know where they were slaves. My mom experienced Jim Crow. I think I've watched every episode of Eyes on the Prize when I was younger. With that said, this is a great call out. Again, this is directed to Chuck Schumer by a guy on the internet. It's perfect. Can you directly explain to me how the SAVE Act is, quote unquote, Jim Crow 2.0? Literally every black person I know has an ID. Literally every black person I know has a car, or at least a ride. Literally every black person I know knows how to vote. Well, ... except the ones with felonies, but they don't count. It's a great response. Again, reading it straight from this Twitter account, Zeke Arkham on X. With your advanced, and this is again directed to Schumer, with your advanced white liberal thinking, you must know more than me. Exactly. Apparently, as I experience daily on this app, white liberals are experts on being black, even more so than actual black folks. Perhaps you could explain it to me like I'm 5. I'd look it up on the internet, but Kathy Hochul's already told me I don't know what a computer is, and Joe Biden says I can't navigate it anyway. Looking forward to your answer. No hugs, Zeke. This is why you need to enjoy your time on X. It's the place to be. Okay, this is perfect. Well, there was already some fireworks in the Senate. I got to get to this. This is what John Thune. Let's start with our illustrious leader. Thune kicked this off. These were his remarks on it.
Next week, I will be bringing the Save America Act to the floor, and we will be having a full and robust debate. 83% in an August 2025 poll supported requiring photo ID at the polls for all voters. That includes 71% of Democrats, 76% of Black Americans, 77% of Asian Americans, and 82% of Hispanic Americans. It kind of feels like the only Americans not to support voter ID requirements are Democrats here in Congress. That's right. We're expecting continued, full-throated opposition to voter ID and the Save America Act from Senate Democrats. I can really see only two reasons for Democrats opposing this legislation. Either Democrats are just reflexively opposing this proposal because it originated from Republicans, or Democrats believe that there are, in fact, people out there voting illegally and that it's benefiting Democrats. And they want to keep it going. Mr. President, I can't guarantee an outcome on this legislation, but I can guarantee that we are going to put Democrats on the record.
Yeah, this is important. Now, look, I mean, again, I don't know. It's a whole lot of theater. He's obviously wants to absolve him of blame in the eyes of voters. I'm not a big believer that he is acting in good faith. Now, here's Dick Durbin versus Mike Lee from Utah, Democrat on Republican. A little bit of a back and forth here.
Of what is required by this act when it comes to registering to vote. You have to present identification, correct? But your driver's license, which most people use in the course of business every single day, is not acceptable. What is acceptable is a passport. 50% of Americans do not have a passport. Those who want to obtain it so they can vote will pay $186 and wait 3 or 4 weeks for that to happen. Secondly, you can use a birth certificate. But any person who has changed their name as a result of a marriage or a hyphenated relationship has to find not only their birth certificate, but some correction of it to prove that they're eligible to register to vote.
I'm happy to report to my dear friend and colleague, Senator Durbin from Illinois, you're in luck. We've taken care of that. When you read the bill, what you'll discover is that we've made special accommodation for those who don't have documentation, for those who can't find their birth certificate, maybe their house burned down, maybe their dog ate it, whatever it is. When all else fails, if you don't have documentation establishing the information on your birth certificate or what would be in a passport or otherwise, the bill contains a provision requiring each state to allow an alternative mechanism by which someone can, by attestation, issue a sworn statement establishing the critical facts underlying their citizenship. It then puts the onus on the state to follow up on that and to determine the authenticity of it. States have access to their own records. States have reciprocity with other states and are able to achieve verification of that. So we've taken care of that problem, and so I'm sure you'll be elated to hear that, and we look forward to having your affirmative vote when we vote on the Save America Act.
Yeah, see, now boxing him into a corner. Absolutely how it ought to be. And of course, I don't think this is going to get things across the finish line at all because the Democrats want to fight this because they want to continue cheating. Plain as day. Now, I mentioned earlier the Democrats that were making the argument married women upon a name change won't be able to figure out how to get their ID in time to vote. That's an insurmountable problem. So here is Mazie Hirono, Democrat from Hawaii, traveling at the speed of spam with this absolute bunk.
This is not about voter ID. Oh, stop that. That's like a total bullshit description of the SAVE Act. Let me just focus on one part of the SAVE Act. In order to register to vote, you're going to have to show different pieces of documents. So if you're, let's say, a woman who got married, changed your last name, and if your last name doesn't match the name on your birth certificate, you're not going to be able to register to vote. That I call stealing our votes.
Yeah, this if you are a married woman and you hate Trump, okay, I get this ought to be so offensive to you. All right, when we come back, California and Gavin Newsom. Boy, do I have a story for you. Sam Rajovsky here on the What's Right Media Network. Back in a moment.
I'm the best.
Personal injury law has been the same for a long time.
The best.
Big egos, greed, and sleazy schemes. We've had enough. Welcome to Sam and Ash, the new standard for personal injury law, where things are done the right way, because you deserve a team that delivers real support and results. When you have both, your whole world can change. Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right.
Hi, Sam Rajovsky here behind the What's Right microphone, speaking truth Monday through Friday here on the What's Right Media Network. Now, let me tell you something here about what to do if you're in an accident. I'll do it quick. You guys know the drill. You know what I'm going to say. Don't handle your case on your own. All right? Get legal advice. Get legal help. Do it. Because people now, I'm finding more and more are trying to handle these things on their own, or trying to do, they're doing the right thing in the sense that they're being honest with the insurance company, and being honest is good. Except when you're dealing with a bad faith actor across from you, like insurance companies are, unfortunately. I hate to break this to you. Don't do it. You can write a mean letter. You can have ChatGPT write it for you. But at the end of the day, you don't have any power behind it. What happens if they read your nice letter and get all your medical bills and look at everything and then tell you, sorry, go pound sand, hire a lawyer. They don't have to pay you anything. The worst thing you can do is take them to small claims court, and the limits are really low there. You can't get a lot of money in small claims court. Not a big risk to them is my point. So hire Sam and Ash Injury Law from the beginning. And if you've been doing it on your own, no problem. We won't judge you. Call us 800-304-2000, 800-304-2000. samandashlaw.com is the website. And we'll help you out. We'll get you through it. But you're not going to get anywhere on this. Trust me. Again, Sam and Ash Injury Law, because you deserve what's right. All right, friends. Gavin Newsom, I mentioned this yesterday, and it's coming on the heels of an enormous developing story of California fraud. We've talked about this from the very beginning. I've told you that, California is going to prove fertile ground for fraud busting. And CBS News did a report, and you got to say, it's coming from CBS News. There's some legitimacy to it. So CBS ran an analysis of records for every hospice in LA County. Now, hospice is, if you're end of life, you get palliative care. You get it maybe in your own home. There's hospice providers. There's all these companies, and it's getting defrauded. It's getting defrauded big time. There are stories about taxpayers looking to get Medicare benefits, like Medi-Cal in California, and they log in to get Medi-Cal. They're like, "Oh no, sorry, you're on hospice." What do you mean what do you mean getting health insurance? You're half dead. Because people are like, "What? No, I'm not. I'm living and breathing." And then they figure out that their identity was stolen and basically used to file claims against. There is an unusually large number of hospice companies, in LA County. About 1,800 of them, far more than most regions. And there's about 700 of them have indicators of potential fraud. They're running the data on that as we speak. Many hospice businesses appear to be shell operators. Again, this thing is running rampant. And watch as they begin to pull the thread on this bad boy. I know where it's going to lead. You know where it's going to lead. Here's the prediction. These companies are raking in millions of dollars. It's fraudulent. It's the Minnesota model. Some of that money ending up in the pockets of Democrat politicians who have looked the other way. Rob Bonta, the state's attorney general, I doubt he's really going after these people because they're giving him moolah. They're giving him money. So the Democrats, in an unholy alliance with these fraudsters, are turning a blind eye, letting them operate. These people are operating. The problem gets worse and worse. And eventually you run into the buzzsaw of reality, which is that we as Americans have had enough. And it brings up some of Newsom's baggage, because if you'll recall, one of the big stories this week has been that Newsom, despite his monumental efforts to become the undisputed frontrunner in the Democratic primary for 2028, is falling short. He's getting beaten by Kamala Harris, who legitimately humiliated herself last year in the election. No two ways about that. All right? Well, last year, it's now 2 years ago. My God, it's just time is going. So, 2024. We all know when the election was, apparently, except for me. But I digress. Newsom, you look at this. Remember 3-4 months ago when he went all in on the new Twitter account? He had the new identity and he was going to go beat Trump. And then he went around, he got his knee pads and he's going to handing out knee pads and signing. The whole thing was so bad. All right. Well, because the knee pads, can I say this as a marketer here? This is an aside. It's my show. I can do what I want. All right. Listen, you do not market someone else's brand. Like, this is 101. I'm tempted to make a remark on X about one of my competitors. And so, sometimes maybe it slips. But the point is, you would never advertise your competitor, yourself, right? Like, he's putting these Trump knee pads together, right? I mean, they say, right, Robbie? They say Trump on them. Like, this is like, okay, like, you'll never see Toyota run an ad featuring Honda. They'll say generic other guy. The other guys, the only brand in the history of marketing, and I know a thing or two about marketing, that did this successfully was Apple, when you had the Apple guy and the PC guy. Like, that was an example of where this worked. So Newsom is obsessing with Trump without actually building his own brand. This is okay, nobody tell him. Like, I don't want Newsom to figure it out, but I'm just letting you know what the problem is. Okay? So he's kind of like flailing, right? It's not working. And Kamala still's beating him. And what does Kamala do? Kamala HQ 67. Like, Kamala's doing nothing. Kamala delivers a word salad a month, and people still are voting for her. I mean, Newsom, trust me, folks, Newsom is enraged. Now, the problem is twofold. One, I don't think his marketing strategy is working. Just mentioned that. The other problem is, the more we get to know Newsom, the worse it gets. And I, as a former Californian, as Nevada's favorite recovering Californian, I know this stuff. But, when Gavin's running for governor in California, the media there kind of don't really run with any of this stuff, and there's no serious opposition. It's one-party rule. In North Korea, people don't really say the bad stuff about Kim Jong-un, all right? So when he became mayor, this stuff is now coming out, and it's starting to circle again. People don't remember this whole story. His campaign manager, his name was Alex Tork. And he became the deputy chief of staff at City Hall in San Francisco when Newsom became mayor. And this was the guy whose wife Newsom, had an affair with. His best friend, his deputy chief of staff, prior to that, his campaign manager, he screwed his wife. And I think was married to Kimberly Guilfoyle at this time. But that's not the worst part of the story. This is the part of the story that's going to give Democrats the ick. Because that's the takeaway. You and I, as I'm guessing more conservative people, are already grossed out by Newsom. But, the people that might vote for him, especially the women that might vote for him, wait till they find out this part. After the affair became public, it came out that Newsom's mistress was also his secretary. She was his appointments secretary when he became mayor. So he had an affair with her, and she became a paid employee of the city. Or maybe it was the other way around. It doesn't really matter. Point is that during her tenure, she missed 20% of the work of the time. She was like, didn't show up to her job. There was a 9-month stretch when she never worked even one full week. She exceeded her PTO. This is the mistress of Gavin Newsom, who, by the way, is still at this point married to Gavin Newsom's best friend and chief of staff, deputy chief of staff, in City Hall. Wow. Yeah, she kept taking PTO, and it that was in excess, and she kept getting paid. And then she took 3 months off under the city's catastrophic illness program for alcoholism. By the way, no city employee in San Francisco history had ever been approved for paid leave for alcohol issues. And this just, look, I mean, never got investigated, never got looked at. The story is there. Everybody knows about it. Now, I expect this is going to start coming out in, as we get into the Democratic primary. And the more that comes out about Newsom, the worse it's going to get. This matters, okay? It matters because, Newsom tried to cover this up. He said he had alcohol problems, that he went to rehab. He did this during his run for governor in 2018, all right? He said he went to rehab, And then, that was before, right? No, it was before 2018. And then it was after that he started to deny that it ever happened. Yeah, because the guy's all over the map. The best thing is it's all on video, his denials, his affirmations, everything. It's all on video. The Democratic primary, folks, get your popcorn. It's going to be unbelievable. Now, I got to tell you, these crazy shootings. We had last 24 hours, 2 confirmed, it seems, terror attacks. The first happened in West Bloomfield, Michigan. Here's what we know. The vehicle driven by a guy rams a synagogue, a Jewish synagogue complex. There's a school there. Temple Israel is one of the largest Reform synagogues in the U.S., about 12,000 members. Happened around midday yesterday. The suspect rams his vehicle into the building and fires a rifle. Security guard was struck by the vehicle and injured. And my understanding is that it was either that security guard or a different security guard that then killed the attacker. There were 140 kids in the building, preschool and school, safely evacuated. And this is being investigated now by the FBI as a targeted act of violence against the Jewish community. So, the identity, as of right now, I'm seeing maybe it's Ayman Ghazali, who's a naturalized U.S. citizen originally from Lebanon, resident of Dearborn, Michigan. This is this is being still confirmed and disputed in some places. So that's the suspicion. Now, the second attack happened in Old Dominion University. This is in Virginia, Norfolk. And this happened at Constant Hall there yesterday morning. ROTC class, military affiliated individuals, 1 killed, 2 wounded. Again, the shooter, Mohammed Baylor Jallo, 36. Now, this guy has quite the rap sheet. And you want to talk about Democrats and catch and release? This is a wow. Former Army National Guard member, previously convicted of attempting to provide material support to ISIS. He served 11 years in prison for a terror offense. He was released in December of 2024. So, we let this guy go. My God, we let this guy back in the country That's what we do? That's our plan? He enters the classroom, he shouts, Allahu Akbar. Okay, so what was that time to reoffend? Let's see, December 2024. So that's 1 year and 3 months. Now, the students there subdued and killed the attacker. One thing I've seen him is he a naturalized U.S. citizen? That's a question here that a few people have had a different take on this. You know, well, exactly. Well, so here's the thing. You know, again, I have no problem taking away citizenships from people who have come to this country, who have been naturalized as citizens and then commit terror offenses. We have done this. We do absolutely, when new facts come to life, we take people's citizenship away. And you're going to hear a lot of arguments against this from the left. And well, there's precedent for this that has nothing to do with Trump. Or even, you know, people of color, if we're going to be kind of liberally obtuse about it. Well, there's a number, for example, you know, after World War II, a number of Nazis came to the U.S. and started over. And, you know, they were particularly high ranking. One of them was John Domaniuk. And he was, I believe, a guard in Treblinka. And he, whether he was, it was disputed whether he was this one very terrible guard or he was not that person. But, you know, was fairly certain that he did participate in the Holocaust, maybe just as a lowly guard. Anyway, he was expelled from the country. He was stripped of his U.S. citizenship and sent packing, basically on his deathbed. If you remember the videos then of him being removed from his house. So this is what we need to do. I mean, this is crazy. And who would in their right mind let someone out of prison that is an ISIS soldier? ISIS is so bad that we gave air support to the Taliban in 2019 and 2020. That's, yeah, you know, you hear stories about, oh, do you believe we're still supporting the Taliban? Well, I can ask why, and then ask why the hell this guy's out of prison. It's just mind-blowing. Now, Iran, a few updates on this. That, you know, there's, you know, you got to think about what's behind this. And even Trump can't be trusted, and not because he's not clear-eyed about things, but because there's some of this has to be kept back, right? We're playing poker against our enemies. So I want to explain a little bit behind this. I've always been talking about the Chinese. Have you noticed that China and Russia, both of them, haven't defended Iran? They didn't defend Venezuela. They didn't come to the assistance of Maduro in Venezuela. They wrote a strongly worded letter, kind of like you would if you didn't hire Sam and Ash to deal with your insurance claim. You would write a strongly worded letter, but they didn't back it up with anything. They did jack diddly squat. And it, you know, I've been thinking a lot about this. It's possible that one of the key things that is coming from all of this, be it Venezuela, now Iran, Cuba might be next. What's coming from this is demonstrating, Trump is forcing the question whether China and Russia will defend their sworn allies. And the fact is, Russia isn't ready for a confrontation, and Russia's too bogged down in Ukraine. And it's a message, an American message from Trump to Africa, Latin America, Cuba. China will abandon you. At the first sign of trouble, China is out. And this is, you know, I can't tell you, folks, how brilliant this is as a maneuver, because the Chinese have been going around basically paying people off. Well, paying people off. They've been making investments in a bunch of third world countries around the world, and they've been signing, well, maybe not quite NATO-style mutual defense contracts, but signing security agreements with a number of these countries. They had a security agreement with Venezuela. They had a security agreement with Iran. And all hell breaks loose, like literally American soldiers coming in and doing things, dropping bombs, in one case, literally kidnapping the president. And the Chi-Coms are nowhere to be seen. He has denuded the much feared, and I think sometimes overinflated, Chinese tiger. More of a paper tiger. Defanged it, I could say, right? If you're calling it the Chinese dragon. And then this is such an unbelievable maneuver, and all these America First people are missing it. Now, I'm an America First guy, right? But I want to see America first, and the way we become first is if we dominate. And I'll restate my core-held beliefs on this again. I don't want to see a stupid, mindless war a la Iraq. I want clear objectives. And I want to see a war being executed in a fearsome and unapologetic way. And in order for us to be first, okay, everybody else has to come in second, third, fourth, right? And I want our president, I want Donald J. Trump to make us first again. Not by handing out $10 million to some people in Africa for studying male circumcision, but rather by demonstrating that we will obliterate our enemies, support our friends, and repatriate jobs back into the U.S. and trade with all willing to do so. That's the way forward. Folks, have a great weekend. Sam@whatsrightshow.com is my email. Find the show. If you're still listening to the radio, it's okay. But find the show on the podcast. You'll get it first thing in the morning. What's Right Show, wherever you get your podcast. I'll see you on Monday.